Hello and welcome. So in this YouTube video, I'm going to be talking about mental health and loss of identity. I'm going to be talking about my personal story and how I truly struggled to identify myself in who I was and to find a sense of who I wanted the world to see me as. So my name's Victoria Bedford and I'm a holistic spiritual therapist, medium and tarot reader. At the moment my work is specialising in inner child work, specialising in understanding you, your mental health, things that you have been through. And that has come after extensively working to heal myself. Now there is another video on my page under the YouTube Spiritual Hub talking about some of the traumas that I've been through in my childhood and early adolescence. Now it was a little bit all over the place, I'm not gonna lie, because I was very nervous. It was my first video and for me I was uncomfortable initially being that open on YouTube, even though my other platforms have been open. So over time, I'm going to be talking more about my journey and more about my story and how I come to the place where I am now in my life, hugely healed, unmedicated, and empowering and helping others through their pain and trauma. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about understanding the lack of identification you may have, understanding who you are, and who you may be showing up to the world as. So with mental health such as borderline personality disorder, body dysmorphia, even OCD and other mental health conditions, there's quite often a disconnection in self. When I was 18, I was diagnosed with bipolar. And throughout my years of having really no support or little support from mental health practitioners, but being diagnosed with other mental health disorders such as OCD, body dysmorphia, and then researching a lot about borderline personality disorder, which I never got a formal diagnosis for, but absolutely know I had. Everything about borderline personality disorder, which does generally mimic or coincide with bipolar, and have characteristics of OCD and body dysmorphia. And a lot of these mental health diagnoses interlink. Many people get one diagnosis, then possibly get another diagnosis. So it's not so much about the diagnoses that make a difference, it's the characteristics within that diagnosis which interlink in many, such as not knowing who you are. And how did this show up in my life? How did I not know who I were? Well, growing up, I'd spent a long time being what everyone else wanted me to be. Behaving in ways that seen me not being hit or not being sexually touched. Showing parts of myself that would please another. Keeping my emotions hidden. My anger coming out in other ways because if it came out in certain ways, I would be punished. But also dressing in ways to please others. Dressing in ways to fit in because I was bullied at school. Dressing in ways to appear less sexual because of certain abuse. So how this started to show itself with me in adulthood is, and what I didn't realise at the time, any of this is through years and years of healing that I've understood this. I turned to repetitive self-destruction within myself. So first of all, it started off with self-cutting. That's how I managed my anger. I didn't know who I were. I was self-cutting, I was angry. And then it started off with, and then it continued with piercings, continued hair changes, and I mean continued hair changes. every week I would be dyeing my hair a different colour. I'd be cutting it a different way. I'd be putting extensions in it. I would continually be seeking to pierce myself in different ways, whether it's self-piercing or piercing in a salon. I would get tattoo after tattoo. My body is pretty covered in tattoos because I was continually trying to find who I were, as well as, I think, seeking a way to outlet my pain. I also dressed in ways that shocked people for a period of time. So I connected to the cultures of Gothic and heavy metal. And I do personally believe that some of that kind of need to be so different is the need to almost rebel against the society of who we think we should be. And I loved the fact that I was so different, but it didn't feel right still. I still didn't feel like I knew who I were. I just felt like I was a piece of a puzzle that wasn't my life. It was a puzzle of a group of goths or a puzzle of a group of metals, and I felt like I belonged, but I didn't truly feel like I belonged within myself. So I went through years and years and years of going through that, and then trying to be demure, taking all my piercings out, covering all my tattoos through fear of judgment, being shamed and feeling shame for holes in my face through tattoos, and always wanting. So I went through a period of time where I felt I had suddenly become an adult and I wanted to be demure, and I lived in shame because I had tattoos and I had piercing holes, and again I didn't know who I was. And I was constantly jumping between different ways of being, and none of them were me. Or at least I didn't know which one really was me, because I was constantly seeking to fit in. And every time I felt angry or I felt like I couldn't deal with something, I'd go and get a tattoo. I would go and get the thrill of a piercing. I would cut my hair. I would dye my hair. And it's almost as if I would feel like suddenly I'd have some form of control. In a world where I felt like I had no control, I suddenly felt that I had control over something. And that's how body dysmorphia started to kind of invade my life. I was constantly changing my clothes through fear of people judging me what I was wearing. Maybe what I was wearing was not nice enough, or didn't look good enough, or it was a bit tight or a bit loose. And I was showering 4 times a day, having anxiety through sitting on buses and people behind me. And this dominated my life for 25 years, I would say. And I was on medication. And I'd been offered some forms of therapy, but it never worked. I was just told, it's all, it's not all in your head, but it's, you got to think your way out of this. And to a certain extent, now understanding about healing, they are partially right. But when you're trying to help somebody heal through trauma who has no trauma therapy understanding, and they're only working from a CBT place, or they're only working from talk therapy, or they're only working from a place of medication, they're not empowering you, enabling you, or leading you on a journey of self-connection and reconnection. And I was so stuck between the views of other people, the views of myself. And what do I mean by that? Every time somebody said to me, I prefer your hair a different colour, I would instantly go and change it back. So if I dyed my hair red and somebody said to me, I prefer your hair black, I would be in agony then over, oh my God, I must look better with black hair. I definitely look better with black hair. And I would come up with all of these reasons as to why I look better with black hair. So then I'd dye it black. And then I'd completely miss the red. And other people would say, oh, but you look so different with red. You look so funky with red. And I'd be on another roller coaster of the feelings of, yes, why did I do that? I'm listening to other people. And I'd be in constant inner conflict. Constant inner conflict. That inner rebel in me. That inner rebel that sits within people who have not been heard. People who have not been validated. People who have grown up and made to feel that they have to fit in. Or they have to be quiet. Or they have to do as they're told. And for 25 years, this absolutely dominated my life. I didn't know who I were. And it used to make me so angry and so sad. I just wanted to feel confident and comfortable in my body. I would lose huge amounts of weight because of body shaming by my mum. And then people would tell me how skinny I was, but I loved it. To me, that was control. And I didn't realise at the time it potentially was an eating disorder because I wasn't controlling the food I ate. But I was. I was controlling how much I ate. And I didn't believe that was an eating disorder. I believed the eating disorder was, and I never got formally diagnosed with that, but looking back at how much mental health interloops with so many different things. And people believe that because they don't have their diagnoses, that they don't have it. But you will never get a diagnosis for everything you have. Why? Because there isn't the availability to be seeing that many mental health practitioners, especially in this day and age. You're lucky to get an appointment. You're lucky if you're there long enough for them to assess you. And you're lucky if it's not just medication they give you. And not only that, mental health is so complicated in the sense that it's not healable, but it's complicated because there are so many mental health disorders that are so similar to another mental health disorder. And that is why it is so linked to adverse childhood situations, trauma in childhood, a hard life in childhood, emotionally unavailable parents, strict parents, authoritarian parents, narcissistic parents. Now does that mean everyone who's been in that upbringing is gonna suffer all of them? No. Because everyone deals with things differently. Everyone has a different resilience level. But for me, that's how it showed itself. Body dysmorphia, OCD, borderline personality disorder. I didn't need that diagnosis. By that point, I already had bipolar. I already had all those others. And the more I was starting to realise along my healing journey, the more I realised I had borderline personality, because that is a manifestation, that is a creation from childhood trauma, which is what I went through. And I do believe that I am pretty healed from them now. I believe that majority, quite often, of mental health diagnoses come from trauma. And it has been widely researched that when we treat and start to heal that trauma, that is when our mental health starts to become better. That's when we start to become more healed. Now, I'm just going to sit here. When I was healing, it's a long journey. I've been on this journey a long time of healing. I've been on this journey now for 8 years of true, in-depth inner child work and shadow work. Trying to understand all of who I were, because I defined myself by all the labels that I was given. And labels are important to a certain extent, but we are so stuck with the labels now. We are almost led to believe that once we have a label, that's it, we're stuck with that label for the rest of our life. We are stuck with our mental health label for the rest of our life. But that really is not the truth. And I know this so strongly. I've seen how many people who have been through spiritual healing and connecting to themselves have made such a change in their life and healed so much that they are no longer defined by their mental health diagnoses. Borderline personality disorder is quite healable, and that's actually, you know, a very known fact by psychotherapists, you know, psychologists. It's known. Alongside bipolar. Bipolar is often said that it's genetic. Well, there has not been a single genetic gene found that has been passed down from family members, but yet they're saying it's genetic. The way it's genetic, I believe, and from my research, is, for one, what is predisposed is maybe that if you or a parent are sensitive. If you are sensitive in the sense of not everyone has the same resilience levels, so you're going to be predisposed to what you see your parent going through, learned behaviour, but also a genetic makeup that isn't exactly the same as somebody else who has a lot of resilience. And there's lots of factors in this. It isn't just genetic. It is nature and nurture too. It's what you see and what you experience and what is passed down. My mum, if she ever had got any help, would have been diagnosed with bipolar. Absolutely. And borderline personality disorder. Absolutely. My mum has suffered serious mental health things that she got no help for. And my dad was severely abusive sexually, would touch us in places that was molestation. And I spent many years believing, because it wasn't rape or it wasn't as bad as somebody else's pain, that it wasn't worthy of me believing that that's what he had done. You know, but as an 11-year-old child, to have parts of you touched, to be made to feel sexual by a father, it's very detrimental. But then also to be raised in an environment I had to be quiet. I wasn't allowed to say anything. My mum didn't believe us. You know, and then to also be hit. Because my dad was an authoritarian father. He believed in the cane regularly. Wouldn't think twice about punching us in the face. And when you grow up in that kind of environment, but you don't have to only grow up in that kind of environment to experience mental health. If you grow up in an environment where a parent is got addiction, I mean, my dad was an alcoholic, but if you've got a parent that has addiction but isn't abusive, in the sense they're not hitting you, but doesn't mean they're not mentally abusive, in the sense that there is forms of different abuse. Mental abuse is as prevalent and as, if not more impactful sometimes, than sexual abuse. And this is not diminishing sexual abuse, or physical abuse. But mental abuse is very under the radar. And if you have an overly strict parent, or a parent who has high expectations for you, a parent who expects you to be a certain way and doesn't nurture you in the sense of who you are, that's going to affect you. I had dissociation disorder and derealization and depersonalization. And that is different to dissociation disorder, in the fact that dissociation disorder, you have potentially multiple personalities, you have an identity disorder. You know, and those are some of the things that people also get diagnosed with. But you don't have to be at that extreme level of getting those diagnoses to have lost a sense of self. Many people who repetitively feel lost in life, who feel like they kind of don't know why they're here, don't really know what their purpose is, have a disconnection to self. And having a disconnection to self is really impactful on your mental health. It's a cycle. With continued disconnection to self, you can't heal. If you can't heal, you can't have connection to yourself. And nothing gets better. If nothing gets better, you're just still disconnected to yourself, and then you can't heal, and the cycle continues. When I had my breakdown, which is the last breakdown I ever had 8 years ago, and the worst one, that's when I started a journey of self-exploring. And I didn't know all of what I know now, obviously, because this has been years of research, years of academic work and learning. And I am somebody that, if you read or watch my other videos, was become a perfectionist, wanted to know as much as I could about myself, about my trauma and how it affected me, which in turn has empowered me, enabled me to help and heal and empower others on their journey of self-understanding. So when I had my breakdown, that was a time I realised how much impact my traumas and my past had had on me. And it was a time I really had to start connecting and looking within. And it was never a journey that happened overnight. It was a slow journey. And again, I never understood what signs from trauma really were until I started to explore the signs, that trauma that I had. And when I started to connect in different aspects, connect to how I felt about people, and I really had to ask myself that, how do I feel about people in my life? Truly feel. Be honest with yourself, Vicky, how do you feel? And I had to start grieving some of the relationships that I had allowed myself to believe were completely different to what they were. Not only family, but a lot of friends that I had trauma bonds with, which I will do another video on. Trauma bonds to people who were continually hurting me because they were also in pain. And I suspect in ways I were hurting them because I was in pain. But as I healed and I wanted to become more of the person I wanted to be, such as somebody who didn't want to scream out in pain all the time, who didn't want to push people away, who didn't want to shut down or shout out, I had to start slowly committing to myself. And the more I started to challenge my own behaviours slowly, the more I realised I didn't want to be hurt by other people and how much pain other people were in. And they weren't going to start changing how they were treating me. And when you start connecting to yourself in that way, when you start to actively choose who and what is in your life, that's when you start to connect to yourself without you even realising it. And it was really weird because I went through a period of dressing really frumpily, wanting to hide my body because I put on weight, wanting to be the 38-year-old I thought I had to be, dressing a certain way. And the more I started to connect to myself, the more I started to feel confident slowly with the choices that I was making. And that meant actively choosing every choice. If somebody was rude to me, I would pause to choose how I was going to respond to that. Now, it didn't work all of the time. Some of the time I still reacted. But as I was slowly learning a new way of living and started to respond instead of react, I got to see the world through a different lens, through a more healed lens. And it did lead me through a place of judgment where I would judge others, absolutely, because I had to really become very judgmental of what I did and didn't want in my life. And then that started to hurt because I didn't want to be so judgmental. But I now know that when you start to reconnect to yourself, your judgments have to become something that you connect to. Whereas before I'd probably judge and not realise I was judging and it was detrimental. Now I had to really lean into judgment. I had to really lean into a form of judgment because I had to now decide, who did I want to be? Meaning not who did I want to look like, but who did I want to be in life? Did I want to be peaceful? Did I want to be more connected to people who were wanting to be connected to me for the right reasons? Did I want to drink less? Did I want to do a job that was more fulfilling? And as I slowly started to proceed along that path, I started to connect to a sense of self, of who I was no longer feeling like I needed to change my hair constantly, slowly working with the fact that, I mean, I shaved all my hair off 2 years ago. And that for me was something that I chose to do cathartically because I wanted a fresh start. My hair had dominated me. I was colouring my hair every week. So dominated of how I looked. In the sense of wanting to look different, wanting to look nice, wanting to look good. Everything was so external, how I thought I needed to look. Always thinking about how others would view me. And the more I started to connect to myself and started to heal and understand my mental health, the more I started to, like my trousers that I'm wearing now, want to choose things for me. And it's ironic really because I haven't had a tattoo since. Bearing in mind I am completely, my arms have lots of tattoos, my back, my leg. And I haven't had a tattoo since. So even though I now am at peace with the tattoos that I chose, I now know why I chose them. I now know why I did it. But I no longer feel shame and guilt for doing it. I know that that was a wounded part of me. And I no longer feel the need now to continue getting any more. Yes, I have put my piercings back in, but I feel that I have put them back in for me because I enjoy them, because I like them, not because I want to appear different or unique or that I'm standing out. And as I slowly started to heal, I started to dress and look how I wanted to, what made me feel happy. And it meant I started to be a bit more flamboyant. But not flamboyant in the sense of, so it's clear that I was always had a flamboyant side to me, but I was misusing the flamboyance before from a place of pain, whereas now my flamboyance is from a place of connectedness, from a place of understanding, from a place of how I want to be and how I want to show up to the world. Whereas before, my flamboyancy and my outward look constantly was like, I wanted to shock, I wanted you to know that I was different. Whereas now, well, we're all different. Every single one of us is unique. And the more we try to actively show to everybody how unique we are, it means that we feel ununique. Because when you actually truly step into your uniqueness, you don't need to shout it from the rooftops. Your energy will show your uniqueness, your personality, your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, because every single one of us is made up of different past, different traumas, different things, different parents, different genetic makeup, different way we look. And when you step into really connecting with yourself that way, your uniqueness shines. And it shines because of not what you're wearing, because how you wear it. I could actually wear jogging bottoms, a big jumper, and I know my uniqueness would still shine through because I am me. And I now realise that you don't have to create a look anymore. You don't have to create who you think or want to be. And how do you start healing that? You start connecting to yourself. I spent many years in meditation, and I still do now, higher self meditations. Connecting to my higher self, connecting to the part of me that I hadn't been connected to for a very long time, connecting to my inner child. Now there are inner child meditations that you can do that lead you to connect to that wounded part of you. And people say, well, I don't want to connect to that wounded part of me. Well, the problem is with that is you are so scared to connect to that wounded part because you believe in fear that you don't want to be wounded, you don't want to feel that wound no more. But what you don't realise is you're being wounded every day by it anyway. Every day you're being wounded by a wound that you're not facing. Now, do you have to relive that wound? No. It might crop up, I'm not going to lie. Along my journey of healing, lots of memories cropped up. Lots of times I felt very overwhelmed by my emotions. I felt sad by the memories that popped in. But along my journey, I've been able to find and create tools That means that by reconnecting to those lost parts of me, maybe to be healthier in the here and now, healthier in mind and body and soul, being more connected to life, to my purpose, to people, to myself, to my children, to my partner, reacting less, and generally feeling confident, a confidence I've never felt. People used to say to me, you're so confident, but what they didn't know, it was a lie. It was the fake it till you make it. I faked confidence, but almost arrogance, I would suspect. Because I felt so unworthy, I had to feel I was better than some people. I was different. And nobody's ever really told me that. But does anybody ever really tell you that? I don't know. I just know from reflecting back on my persona and my personality, how I did have an air of, I am better than you, in the sense of, I don't want to talk to you if you're a man, because I was wounded, or not so much judgmental of people and their life choices, but more so, I don't want to get involved in that. I don't know. It's really hard to explain because I've never been a horrible person, but I do feel that I felt so unworthy in my life. There was an air of superiority. And there is a thing, psychology-wise, and I will talk about this in further videos, when people feel like they're not good enough, they go the opposite way. They create an air of superiority in some way, whether that's, oh, I don't take drugs and other people do, and then in the end I ended up going down that road anyway, or, my children come first. There's always some form of air of superiority because you don't feel good enough. Oh, I would never dress like that. Oh, I would never have my hair like that. Or, I wouldn't work all those hours and leave my children. There's some form of superiority somewhere, and people won't necessarily know it's superiority, but when you don't feel good enough and you're not fully connected to yourself, you will have that. And lots of people do and don't realise it. And I definitely think I did. I definitely think, for a period of time, I never touched drugs until I was about 28. And I used to judge people who touched drugs. Like, why would you do that? Why would you ruin your life? People I would hang around with, I would sit there and just be like, why would you do that? And then in the end, that's the road I took. Because my wounds led me there. I was hiding in my shadows things about myself that I wasn't, I could have quite easily blamed everyone else when I was in that environment. I was around people. No. I had great big wounds that I wasn't facing, and I suppressed the wound for a very, very long time. And in the end, I chose another route to deal with that wound. And most people go, well, that's a late age for you to be starting something. But as I become older, that's when my wounds were showing more. As weird as that sounds. So one of the greatest things of going through mental health is a disconnection you have to yourself. And I hear that so often in the clients that I'm working with. And I want to say to you that you can find who you are. And you're not lost. So when I say find who you are, it's not like you're lost, but you are buried. You are buried amongst who you think you should be, who you've been trained to be and conditioned to be, who you are as a conditioning of trauma, who you are as a conditioning of things that have happened to you. And underneath you, there is a version of you that is authentic, that is you. And I feel so lucky that I have found that version of me, because finally I feel at peace. And I know every single one of you deserve that peace. And I bring these videos to you to talk about my journey, and I don't necessarily want to bring how-to videos because everyone's how-to is going to be slightly different. I can talk about generalised how-tos within the video. But seeking people like myself out who have been on that journey, or seeking other like-minded people out on the same journey, really will empower you. Seeking out people who are understanding their inner child, understanding shadow work, trauma therapy even. But seeking out like-minded communities and, I want to say therapists you trust, okay? Because in any field, there are always people who don't have as much training as they could. And how do you know who you should work with? Well, are you drawn to them? All my clients who I work with are drawn to me. I don't need to mass advertise. I don't need to you know, make somebody feel like they should work with me, because I believe that, well, we're all different, and somebody who isn't drawn to me will be drawn to somebody else who does, who like me, who does the work, but has different characteristics that that person is drawn to. Who are you drawn to? You know, you will heal quicker if you do seek out a mentor of some kind, or somebody who is a wounded healer, or somebody who has been along the journey too. And there may be courses you can buy, but there's also lots of free content. I mean, on my Facebook called The Spiritual Hub, I post a lot and talk a lot on lives about healing and how do we grow. I do also have a subscription group, which is $3.49 a month, that people join. And it's a spiritual community. It's a community. We talk about things on the lives in there. We do pick a card readings. We do rune readings. I talk about trauma in there. And I also do spiritual coaching. But I really want to say to you, if you are somebody that feels lost, or you feel like you don't know who you are, or you can connect to some of the things that I say, no, you're not alone. You're really not. And know that you are a product of what you've been through, okay? And there'll be aspects of yourself you don't like about yourself. But even when you heal, we all have aspects of ourselves that we don't think are good or nice, but we have to become accepting of who we are in all our versions, in all our aspects. And yes, want to grow more, but it's never about becoming better as if any other version of us was not good enough. We've always been good enough. We've just only had certain knowledge up to a certain amount of time. And I hope my videos inspire people to take the healing journey, the mind, body and soul connection journey of different kinds. You know, it can be done in somatic therapy, it can be done parts therapy, it can be done even, you know, adding CBT to the mix, or person-centered therapy. Different kinds of therapy can really together make such a big impact of your life. And if you do have any questions, or you do want to reach out, or you do feel like my videos are touching you in any way, I would really appreciate the feedback. It's taken me a long time to come to YouTube, through fear, through unhealed wounds, through many reasons, and this is the third time I've come to YouTube, and spirits are telling me to just take the journey. So to know along the way that my videos are impacting people, even if it's only one of you, really would, I think, help me, I suppose, understand that, well, I don't know, I don't need that. This work does have meaning. But I feel like I love feedback from people to know exactly how that is helping you. Take care for now, and I'll see you in future videos.